Welcome back everyone to the 8th episode of my journey into making comics, the distribution phase. So distribution is the last step within the creation process. However, it is one of the first things, if not the first thing, that you should be thinking about. And the reason for that is because there's quite a lot that comes into distribution. So if you say something like, okay, I've got a webcomic and I want to publish a page per week, you have to make sure that you can actually produce a page per week. And in order to produce a page per week, you need to make sure that you've got enough time to do it, that you have the art style figured out, and that your viewers are not going to be disappointed that you start publishing on a weekly basis. And then eventually you're like week 5 or week 6 and you're like, oh, I can't keep this up. So that's quite important during distribution. We're going to be talking about that. We are also going to be discussing marketing. Now, marketing your comic is more about social media. There are many different ways of marketing. There are conventions as well, obviously, where you can, get to know other people and people get to know you. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about making money within comics. Now, I personally have not made any money yet, but I want to discuss a few other artists for comics, basically, that are actually doing quite well. Right, so let's get this show on the road. And let's start talking about distribution. Right, so distribution. What is very important about distribution, or at least what I've learned, is that you have to have a very clear idea of what it is that you're making before you even start making it. So before you even start with the earliest of ideas, about how the story is put together and all that stuff, you might want to think a little bit about what type of comic am I making. Is this a graphic novel? Is it a short story? Is it a webcomic that is continuous? Kind of like how many pages, more or less, does it have a beginning and an end? All these type of things, quite important, because distribution is all about providing your readers your content on time. And this could be periodically, like for example, every week, every month, every day, every 2 weeks. You choose how the updates happen. But once you do commit to it, then it's kind of important to follow up. Now, I know this from personal experience. The best example that I have is my project called Reset Access Denied. Now, Reset Access Denied is a webcomic that I started in October as an Inktober project. Now, my objective with Reset Access Denied was to provide a single strip per day during the month of October, right? So every day would have been my entry for Inktober. Now, the thing is that I quickly realized, given the art style that I chose, and I had no preparation for this whatsoever, I did very little concept art, actually none. I'd only created the reveal image a few days before Inktober, and I started publishing this. Now, I kept it up, for 7 days. The first 7 days went fine, but I quickly realized that every strip was taking me anywhere between 5 hours, and my last day, I think it was almost 7 hours for a single strip. So that's pretty much almost a day's work. Now, because I was also having customers at the time and other assignments that I was working on, obviously that wasn't really working. And I was also working Saturdays and Sundays on this project. So again, that was one of my mistakes. Now, Reset Access Denied is still going to happen. I'm still going to upload the strips, and we're going to finish this. So it's about a 10-page webcomic. But this is what I mean by distribution. Knowing your art style, knowing how quickly you can do a page or a strip, how much time it takes to get it done. And once you have a good understanding of this, that's when you start actually telling your readers like how quickly and how often you're going to upload. So the very first question you need to be asking yourself in terms of distribution, or at least I think that's one of the very first things you should be asking yourself, is how much time do I have in order to dedicate to the project that I'm working on? You can do very cool things when you've got a lot of time, and you can go really detailed on the pages if you want. But if you have very little time, you might want to start thinking a little bit smaller, and something that you won't take decades to do in order to share with your readers, followers, whatever you will. So these are some of my personal things that I've had to learn the hard way. Okay, what I did was end of 2015, I think even on the 31st of December of 2015, I announced that I was going to work on a webcomic called Immersion. Now I'm still doing this, funny enough, behind the screens. I'm still doing a whole bunch of stuff. Script is finished. There's a whole bunch of concept art done and all that stuff. And the thing is that I kept on telling my viewers that, yeah, it's coming in a few months' time. And it never did. Because the thing is that I overestimated how long it takes to make a comic. I overestimated the processes. I overestimated the concept art. I overestimated the writing aspect of things. Then a lot of rewrites happened. So these are all super, super important. And the thing that I've learned is just don't tell your viewers of something that's going to happen, or even announce a project until you really understand the project really well. Understand how long it will take you to create the project, understand how long concept art is going to take, and don't be afraid to create schedules, to test things out and to figure out, okay, a page takes me this amount of time, so how much time do I have per week or per month? And then calculate how many pages you can do on a week basis, on a month basis, even a day basis, depending on how fast you work and your art style and all of these things. And the thing is, you very quickly learn that if you haven't done all this like preparation work beforehand, you're gonna somehow get stuck at some point, and then you're there wondering like, oh, months are going by and it's just not moving ahead. Okay, and maybe another thing that might be very useful in terms of distribution is looking at these webcomic platforms. Okay, so there are websites where a lot of people come together to read webcomics. So one of them is Webtoons, and the other one is tapas.io. You can find a whole bunch of webcomics there. They're all for free. You can all read them all for free. And on Webtoons, if you are a featured content creator and you create frequently for Webtoons, you can make some money on a monthly basis. It's a steady paycheck. So again, the type of comics that you will see there are all based on a distribution model that works. So the art style works so that they don't have to create really detailed and crazy art if they're going to put out a lot of content all the time. This is quite important. So you'll notice that on Webtoons or Tapas, sometimes you have really cool looking comics with a lot of details, and maybe it's because there's a team behind it or the creators are extremely, extremely hardcore busy. But in other instances, you'll see more simplified comics, these slapstick comics, or just these funny gigs. So these ones that don't have a continuous story, but every individual entry is like a story upon itself. So these type of comics you will find there as well, and they are a perfect formula for this type of platform. You can get a lot of views, a lot of readers. And the art style doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to be a art genius in order to make a comic, and there are plenty of examples of that in existence. There are plenty of comics that are out there where the art style is quite simplified. In some cases there's even stick figures, and I'll show you an example of that right now. Okay, so the order of the stick. This is a webcomic that you can read for free. It's right here. It's written and drawn by Rich Burlew. And let me quickly bring you to start. Okay, so this is how it all started. Okay, this is back in 2003. As you can see, they're pretty much stick figures. Okay, there's no crazy art with human anatomy and perspectives and any of that stuff. None of that is included in here. It's just a simple comic with a good story. Now, again, I'm just showing you this just to get a point across that you don't need to make really crazy looking art in order to make a successful comic. It all just depends on what you want to do. Now, if those of you out there that think like, but how the hell are you going to make any money off of this? I mean, come on, this is, stick figures, right? Who the hell would buy that? Well, let me show you their Kickstarter campaign. The Order of the Stick, their goal was to get, or his goal was to get $57,750. They received, or he received, 1.2 million eventually. Okay, and he had almost 15,000 backers. So, these are big numbers, and I believe it is the record on Kickstarter for a comic. Another example is Cyanide and Happiness. Okay, similar type of thing. You still got, on the side, you've got all these advertisement things, which is also very common for a lot of webcomics. And the similar setup with the 2 arrows. The last 2 arrows is to show the most recent one, which was uploaded actually quite recent. And the last 2 arrows, the first 2 arrows here will show you the very first upload. And as you can see, this was in 2005, and it was tiny. It was really tiny. This is a very, very popular webcomic. A lot of people read this. Okay, I read it. It's quite funny. I actually like it. And as you can see, it is unbelievably simple. I mean, it's ridiculously simple. But it really is funny. The guy that does it, he's just very funny at writing stories. And the creator, by the way, which I forgot to mention, is Kris Wilson. Now, Kris Wilson also did a Kickstarter campaign on an adventure game. By the way, Cyanide and Happiness also has an animated shorts now, so it's quite funny. It's quite good. And the adventure game, as you can see here in a GIF, it's kind of like a video game with all kinds of items and stuff. I haven't played it, so again, I have no experience with it, but it's just to show you that, it's just to prove that you don't need to be an artistic genius to make comics. Okay, you can do this perfectly well and be extremely successful. Their goal was $300,000, and they ended up getting $575,000 US, and they almost again had 15,000 backers. So I'm telling you, this is just to show you that comics, don't always have to be the Marvel way or the DC way or any of these other very beautiful looking comics. These work just as well, and in some cases they're even much more successful. Which brings us to the next point, marketing. Okay, so marketing your comics. Okay, so what I've learned is that letting the world know that you're making a comic is actually quite important. Okay, so if no one knows that you're working on it, then you won't get readers. And this is a whole art form. Okay, so you have to let people know through social media. If you can let them know through word of mouth, that's even the best one. At conventions. Now the easiest one is social media. Okay, now Instagram, for example, works very well if you do frequent updates, which is something I don't do. I like the platform of YouTube. Because on YouTube I get to show my work and my making of, and the work in progress, and I think that kind of helps for me. And then there are other places like Facebook and Twitter. You have to find the social media that works for you. So it's quite important to spread your art, spread your work, and make sure that when you do spread your work, don't forget to tag in important people, or, it always helps to, be a part of the community. And it's not, social media is not just about you. Okay, it's super important to comment on other people's work, ask how they did it, ask questions, comment, congratulate people if you like their work, really be a part of the community, because that's how you get followers. They don't just follow you just for the sake of it, unless your work is really good and they like it. So for people to get to know you, you kind of need to put yourself out there. So that's very important. These are things that you just need to make time for. I don't have a tremendous amount of followers on Twitter or Instagram. It's also because I do not put a lot of time into it. But if you do, if you really want to get into marketing, then it is maybe one of these things that really does help. All of this takes time. Let's not forget, marketing, distribution, and making money, that is all part of the business of comics, okay? And these are all jobs upon themselves. Just like in the previous videos, we had an inker and a penciler and a colorist and all these things. Every little step that I did are actual individual professions upon themselves. Now, if you're a comic book maker like me that wants to do the writing and the drawing and the marketing and all that stuff, fine, you can do it. It's perfectly possible. I'm definitely not the only one that does it out there. There are a few examples that I've got as well. And there you go. You should definitely look into them because you can learn quite a lot from them. But it's just a little word of caution is that, yeah, making comics on your own, where you want to be a one-man army, that requires a lot of dedication and patience, and it's going to eat up a lot of your time. Alright, so let's have a look at some of the comic book creators that are independent, that do it all by themselves, and that have managed to make a living off of it. Okay, so the creators that I would like to share with you are just a few. There's a lot of them out there, but I just wanted to focus on some of my favorite ones. So the very first one is Jason Brubaker. His website is Coffee Table Comics. He is an independent comic book creator, and he creates some really, really cool stuff. So he currently just finished Sithra, the 4th book. It's the final book. And he also did a very good Kickstarter campaign that just concluded recently. The Sithra series, I haven't read all of it. It's available on Webtoons, which I will get back to a little bit later on. And he also did Remind before that. Very, very interesting as well. As you can see, you can find it on Comixology and Amazon and so forth. So these are a couple of projects that he's worked on. He also has a very good book called Unnatural Talent, that you can, where he basically explains his experiences on how he became a comic book artist, independent, of course. And there's also the audiobook, which I have, which is, it's just very great stuff. Jason Brubaker is someone that really gives a lot to the community. As you can see here, his YouTube channel shows almost 16,000 subscribers, and what he's really good at is just sharing his experiences. He has videos about his journey into making comics, similar to what I'm doing, but just he's much more advanced in his journey. He's done more, so I strongly recommend you guys have a look at it. He also, as you can say, as we're talking about marketing, you can see that people like Jason Brubaker are active on different platforms, just like on Instagram as well. He has 3,300 followers, and he just basically uploads stuff like stuff that he's been working on. There's some private pictures as well about him and his wife. Basically just some fun stuff. This is the ones that you're seeing here are basically drawings he did for Inktober on Post-its for his fans, his followers. It was really cool, so he engages with the community, and that's what creates a lot of following. And so you can see all of his work online for free. The Sithra is through Webtoons. Remind, I believe, you can still see on his website, I believe. Or he had a Remind blog, the way it started, but very interesting. Definitely have a look, and definitely have a look. Right, then moving on, we have Daniel Lieske. Now he's from Germany, and in my opinion, one of the most beautiful webcomics out there that are for free. Okay, so I'm going to give you a very quick preview. Also, what is very cool about his website is that, or his webcomics, they are translated to many different languages. So you have the official translations, and then you have fan translations. He has a nice following as well. We'll do the English one. But I just want to show you how beautiful his art is. It is really stunning. His comic is amazing. I've been following him basically since the beginning, and which is already quite a few years back. This is the very first episode he made, or the very first chapter of his comic. It's about this kid who enters a fantasy world and goes on an adventure inside that fantasy world. But look how beautiful it's just wow. I really love this work. It's amazing. Now, he also had a very successful Kickstarter campaign, just like Jason Brubaker, by the way. He does Kickstarter campaigns frequently. Now, Daniel Lieske, this Kickstarter campaign his very last one was from 2015, I believe. Was also quite successful, $46,000 that he gained of a goal of 18,000 with 940 backers. Not bad at all. His work is really amazing, also worth looking at. And then another big favorite of mine, Mr. Jake Parker, or just Jake Parker, as most of them know him. His website is mrjakeparker.com. Now, I'm showing you here his current project called Skyheart. He already did a Kickstarter for this, even before it was finished. So, one of the few people that I've ever seen do that for comics, and that's because Jake Parker is quite established already. He's done some very fun work. Here are maybe some examples of his current Skyheart comic, which I'm very much looking forward to read. It is really amazing. The art is really good. And the good thing about Jake Parker is that he also shares a lot of his his journey as well, how he got to where he is today, and he talks a lot about his actual his thoughts, the way he feels during the production and stuff like that. It's just nice to hear that from other creators that have eventually ended up making it into the scene, especially when you see he has 107,000 subscribers. That's not bad for an independent comic book artist. So there you go. That's what I have on these guys. Amazing to look at. And let's move on to the money making aspect of things. Money in comics it's perfectly possible. It's just that from my experience and from what I've read online and stuff, is that it takes time. Okay, you're not going to make money on your first comic unless you created this masterful art piece that is perfectly marketed, that is perfectly drawn and written, and you are some superstar in the making. There are people like that out there, but they are extremely rare. So don't be afraid to keep your feet on the ground. Just work very hard, keep believing in yourself, and understand that it takes time. Okay, first you got to prove yourself. First your readers have to believe in you before they're ever going to spend anything on you. So first they have to be convinced of the fact that you can actually do it. You're actually someone that, can bring a product on time, and that you can bring quality, continuous quality, and all of these things. It's quite important stuff. So money, it can happen, and there's several ways it can happen. Once you got a project finished, you can bring it on Kickstarter, and then the other way of making money is through, for example, Patreon. Okay, so Patreon is a website where you can ask your viewers, your followers, to provide you a tiny little bit of money. That could be $1, $2, $3, just a small amount of money on a monthly basis. And if the more viewers you get, the more readers, the more followers, well, it adds up, and like that, you've got a few creators that make pretty good money. I'll give you some examples of these in a second, and then we can have a look at what I mean. Okay, so let's have a look at some comic book creators that are active on Patreon. Now, what you're seeing here are the top 20 creators in comics, in the division of comics within Patreon. Now, you can already start seeing that some of these, they make over $6,000 a month. Okay, and all they need is just 1,713 Patreons to make it happen. And there are a few of these. I mean, even with 3,300, I think the one that's making the most at the moment is Zach Weinersmith, 6,700 a month. There is Tracy Butler, which I also want to cover in a second because she's actually one of my favorites. So yeah, you can make some money on Patreon if you have the right strategy. Now, it isn't easy, okay? So don't just look at this and think immediately like, oh my god, that's it, I'm going to make comics and I'm going to be rich. No. that's not how it works. These people have been working at it for years, and it has taken them a long time to get to where they are now. They're very talented, they're very experienced, so just to get that out the way. Now I'm going to cover Tracy Butler as an example. Now you cannot see what she earns per month. This was different because some of them can hide it if they want, or actually anyone that has a Patreon account can choose to hide the amount that they're making per month. And the reason why she does so well is, first of all, she has a very good following. She's well connected. She's extremely talented. I'll show you the work itself. So this was the very first episode of Lackadaisy, or the very first entry, which was a long time ago. Like I think we're going back close to 10 years or something similar to that. This is when she started. And she has entered from that moment forth. I mean, these are all her entries. Okay, she's done a lot. Her very last entry, her latest one, is this one. It looks absolutely gorgeous. If you love cats and you like very good art, plus the stories are very good, and the 1920s, it's about, in the 1920s and stuff like that, in the United States. It is amazing. I really love it. I think she is unbelievable, and she has just an amazing following, and so you can do it. It's all available for free online on top of that, so you don't even have to do the traditional way of comic book publishing. Just webcomics, make it available, and create a community that follows you. Like here, this is her Tumblr account, and she uploads stuff frequently there. She explains in some tutorials how she draws as well. And she doesn't only draw cats. I mean, I've recently seen a post, if I can find it again, there you go, where, she just draws human beings, from reference. Very good there. I think they're all from the 20s and 30s. And, it's just about creating a community, creating followers, posting online, and, playing a part in the community. She does tutorials as well, which is amazing. She also has a Twitter account. As you can see, she has 25,000 followers. So that's how, through all these different networks is how she ended up getting this following that's needed for Patreon to work. A lot of people need to know you, and your work needs to be awesome, which is exactly what the case is with Tracy Butler. So Lackadaisy, I absolutely love it. I strongly recommend anyone to have a look at that. Then the next one up is Jason Brubaker, which we already saw with Cithra. He's also on Patreon, and here you can see per month he makes currently a $798 per month, which is nothing too bad at all. And this is what a typical Patreon page looks like. Now, if you follow him, then this is a post, for example, for patrons that pay more than $5 a month. And then you'll have access to these things. But you can become one just by clicking the red button here. This is how it all looks for all these Patreon, for the Patreon accounts, and for people that want to make money through making comics or videos or anything of the like. Now, his webcomic is available on a different platform, like Webtoon. As a matter of fact, the comics are very rarely available on Patreon themselves. Patreon is just the website that helps you get the money collected, and there are often posts that are only for Patreon members, like exclusives, which is what you're paying for. So it's very useful. It's very, very interesting. So Webtoon is what we mentioned earlier on, one of these platforms where you can get some recognition, and this is another place where you can make money on Webtoons. Now, this is just to give you an example of what Jason Brubaker does. I'll just show the first entry. I'll have to go up. There we go. So this is Citra, the very first book. Very, very beautiful. I really love his art as well. And obviously this is how it's shown on Webtoons, okay? The way it was meant to be shown is very different. The reason why it looks like this very long strip is because Webtoon is actually made for mobile devices, and in particular mobile phones, okay? So that you can read it on your way home, on a train or stuff like that. That's really what Webtoon is good at. So if you want to see Citra, for example, in the form of an actual book, the way it was created, then you can just go to the Coffee Table Comics website and just buy it from there. There are plenty of opportunities and ways to do that. So this is Webtoon. Now, Jason Brubaker was a featured content creator on here, which means that he was making, he was getting paid for it on a monthly basis. I believe it's like $2,000 a month. These are normally all the featured ones that are making a salary from Webtoon. Okay, so you can find more information on that on the Webtoon website. Then there is Tapas. Here I'm showing Jessup King by Jonathan Rector, which I also like very much. Jonathan also has a Patreon account, and he's making some income from there as well. And you can often just, it's actually quite simple. From these websites, you can support people on Patreon straight away. And he has a few nice entries as well. So these two platforms, good to remember. And finally, in terms of money, there's Kickstarter that was discussed earlier on. Here you can see the comic book projects that were most successful. So they are sorted by most funded. So order of the stick, you remember. And the ones that follow up are the ones that did really, really well. All of these that you're seeing here actually did amazingly well. And even if you don't make comics, I mean, for example, the book How to Think When You Draw, it is really, really fun. I mean, I've had a look at the Kickstarter, and even here, he received £243,000, which is not bad at all. 4,600 backers. This is by Lorenzo Etherington, if I pronounce it correctly. Here's a bit of a preview, and it's all about tutorials on how to draw and stuff like that. So again, these are a few of the ways that you can make money through comics without going through the traditional publishing route that used to be in existence for comics. So there you have it. Let's move on to one last thing that I want to share with you guys, which is a final conclusive overview of the creation process. What I want to share with you guys, and you'll be able to download this as well, is the creation process of making comics, at least the way I view it. I've got this on a PDF that you can download. You can see it on the screen right now. It's a very simple reminder of the steps. Again, none of this is written in stone. It's just the way I do it. But it follows more or less the general process of what you would do in a production setting, whether it's a comic book or you're working on a movie production, anything like that. It's quite similar. So hence why I thought I'd share this with the community, and for whoever can make any use of this, by all means, it's yours to download for free. So have fun with that. And so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was the distribution phase, and we discussed a little bit of marketing and a little bit of making money. So I hope you really liked these last few episodes, which were focused on the creation process. In the next episode, we are going to be focusing on something completely different. I'm going to be discussing as to why the iPad Pro changed my life in terms of comics. So thank you everyone for stopping by. Leave a like and subscribe if you like this type of content, and I'll see you guys next time.